Hello and welcome to Backstage at the Bluesfest 2016. My name's Brian Breen. I'm on the foundation board of directors for the Baton Rouge Blues Foundation, and I'll be coordinating this year's Backstage at the Bluesfest. I'm very excited to welcome our first guest today, Mr. Steve Meyers of Mighty Fine.
Hello, how's it going?
It's great. We had the pleasure at the Blues Foundation of being entertained by Mr. Meyers and his crew, which hails from Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Yep.
On a couple of nights ago at one of our functions, and they rocked the joint. I have to tell you. So this is really a privilege. This is one of the most rockin' bands that I've heard of coming around, coming down the pike.
Why, thank you.
I want to first welcome you back to Louisiana.
It's good to be back. Always good to be home.
And as I recall, you grew up in New Orleans?
Yep, New Orleans, born and raised, LSU graduate.
Oh, my. Well, welcome home.
Lived down in Spanish Town.
Did you really?
Yep, that's my last apartment here in
Spanish?
in the BR.
Spanish Town is a cool neighborhood.
Yeah, no, it was hard to leave, I got to say.
Yeah.
Very cool neighborhood.
What tell us a little bit about some of your early experiences with music. What hooked you into it?
I think it was always just woven in the fabric of my life, if you want to say. As a child, I used to lock myself in our parents' living room and listen to Michael Jackson and Prince and New Edition and dance around and sweating for like hours on a Sunday night when my dad's just staring at me like, is he gonna pass out in there or what, you know? So I always had a passion of music, I guess, out the gate. My early memories is listening to, instead of nursery rhymes remember those old Fisher Price record players?
Oh, yeah.
Instead of nursery rhymes, I had I Want You Back by the Jackson 5 and Mama Pearl. It was all Jackson 5 records. So that's my early recollection of music.
I could definitely see both the Michael Jackson influence as well as the Prince influence in your stage persona and your moves on stage.
Hey man, I'm a child of the 80s, you know? That's what there's no way around that.
Well, that was great stuff.
It really was. Showmanship.
Showmanship, but also good tunes, good arrangements.
Good arrangement, good tunes, you know, good performances.
Yeah.
No lip syncing.
And from what I understand, I've always known that Prince is a very hard worker. For what I understand, also Michael Jackson was a huge, very hard worker. One of our other artists on the festival, Greg Wright, was his touring guitar player. For a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He'll be here tomorrow. But
he's probably in that Showtime documentary, Off the Wall Showtime documentary. It's pretty good.
So, growing up in New Orleans, you surrounded with music. What were some of your influences in the New Orleans
just
music
all
scene?
the sounds. I mean, growing up uptown New Orleans, you had the Neville brothers living around the corner, the Meters living around the corner. Music was everywhere. You know, it's before hip hop started. Everybody's dad had a bass, and they'd be in the driveway on Saturday, just playing bass with no shirt and an afro. You know, just that's basically, you know, it's the early to late 70s and early 80s. You know, you had bands like Chocolate Milk from New Orleans. That was like a funk band. You know, it's like, and I think one of those guys was actually my PE teacher. So it was always around, man. Every corner there was always music.
Did you now? I know you're in your current band. You're a front man now. Do you also play guitar, piano, or?
I played no instrument. I was a saxophone player for a very short period of time, but then in figuring out very early in life, I couldn't march and play at the same time because like marching band, every child in New Orleans is a horn is put in their hand by at least 6 or 7.
Sure.
You know?
Oh yeah.
So
now how did you? Now I know you worked with some hip hop rap labels, whatever, in New Orleans.
Yep.
How did you move from that to singing with the Afghan Whigs, which is more, garage punk, kind of rock and roll?
Well, it was pretty simple. Coming up the time I came up, you know, hip hop was very instrumental in your upbringing, and then moving back to New Orleans. Well, being in college, and I had the first hip hop radio station at LSU. I mean, hip hop radio show at LSU.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to date myself, but I'll say it. I don't care. 1989, 1990.
Yeah.
You know, first hip hop radio show on campus, and then I started working at Paradise Records. That was also here in Baton Rouge, and you get a mix of everything there. It was gangster rap and goth and alternative. So as much hip hop and R&B we're listening to, you're also listening to the Afghan Whigs and Urge Overkill
Okay.
and anything else that's coming down the pike. So I had a love of that music, and the Afghan Whigs also. The first time I heard the Whigs, I heard Jackson 5 in the music. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, Debonair, that's I Want You Back by the Jackson 5.
Oh, sure.
So it's like, it was an instant connection, and it was very easy.
Fabulous. And you got to lament the demise of the neighborhood record store, right? I mean,
Very much so. I come from the neighborhood record store. I worked at the only distribution company in New Orleans when I first after college, and that's where I met, say, the guys from Cash Money and No Limit Records and all those guys. And I used to put their records in stores for them early on before they had major label deals. So just talking to the mom and pops, being part of that mom and pop community was really special. You know,
oh, wow.
The excitement people had on Tuesdays when records came out. You know, it's
That was
great.
the day.
It was great.
Traditionally, record labels release their new releases on Tuesdays.
Yeah. Now
That's-
it's Friday. Huh?
Now, now it's a different world now.
It's a
isn't it?
different world.
Tell me about you had the good fortune with the Afghan Whigs to do a tour with Aerosmith, which
We did.
speaking right. So talking about the late '80s, early and through the '90s, Aerosmith was like, you know, the biggest of the hair bands, right? And they, with their roots going back to the early '70s, really classic rock and blues influenced rock. Do you have any good Aerosmith tour stories?
Well, let me think. Well, I know the one thing that was really special about Aerosmith is like we met them at a time where they were all clean and sober.
Right. So this is right. This is right after Armageddon. They had
Yeah,
the big,
because
the
their
big hit,
tour-
the Diane Warren song, right?
Their
Yeah.
tour was over, and then the Armageddon
Don't
song
want to miss
hit.
a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Armageddon song hit, and they had to put a tour together really fast
Yep.
to capitalize on that hit. And they saw us play at First Avenue in Minneapolis, and we were also label mates on Columbia, so it was like a no-brainer to put the two together. But it was funny because you had to sign these waivers that said you couldn't smoke or drink in front of Aerosmith, and that was really, we were good by it and everything. And then we got to Dallas, I believe, and we ran into Pantera backstage,
Oh my.
who was like, "Hey guys, I heard you had to sign a waiver, and we're taking you out tonight." So they took us to this, I think their own strip club. I think it was called the Clubhouse, and treated us like rock stars because we were like basically in a dry state, traveling around with Aerosmith. But it was fun, man. Steven Tyler used to have B12 shots in his pockets. That's all I'll say on that.
Now you were injured by gunshot in New Orleans, and then you ended up moving to Brooklyn. If you're comfortable talking about it, how did that change your life?
People ask me about it every day.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that I don't know if it changed my life, but more so made me aware of my life. You know, it's the kind of thing where, because the juxtaposition was crazy. I mean, literally like 24 hours before that, I was on stage opening up for Aerosmith in front of 20,000 people. And then you fly home and you go out with your girlfriend, and next thing you know, you're laying in front of your apartment shot up. It's like, what just happened, you know? But yeah, I got to say, the amount of love of New Orleans and Baton Rouge, the amount of people that came to the hospital, just the support. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks, had to relearn how to walk. Everybody, it was like being alive for your own wake. You know, like the love that came into the hospital and into those rooms really got me on my feet quickly.
Okay.
You know, and that was a good thing.
How did it come about to you to move to Brooklyn?
Well, I always had that in the back of my mind, even before I started playing with the Whigs. You know, it was like this thing I was going to do. And I remember talking to Greg Greg Dooley from the Afghan Whigs.
Yep.
I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about moving to Brooklyn or moving to New York. And he said, well, if you move, you're going to miss it. And I was like, miss what? Like, I had no idea he already had this plan of adding me on as a backup singer.
Mhm.
So, I kind of took that hint,
Yeah.
got to see most of the world, got to tour with Aerosmith and the
Yeah.
whole thing.
So the Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn, for those who don't know, is it's a small insular neighborhood. When you moved there, it was sort of pre-Brooklyn Renaissance or just the dawn of the Brooklyn Renaissance.
Yeah.
It's a part of town that has a lot of artists, performing artists, graphic artists, what have you. But it also it's a strange neighborhood. I used to live up New York myself,
Oh, cool.
and what was it like living in that neighborhood? You have also this huge Hasidic Jewish population
Yeah,
too.
very much so.
And so you walk down the street, and there's hipsters, and then there's the guys with the long beards and
Right.
the hats and-
Well, I got there a little bit pre-hipster. I mean, when I moved to Brooklyn, I moved to New York, I was also a painter, studying art, LSU, fine arts graduate, and I was looking for a space to create. And it was like, well, if you need space, you got to move to Brooklyn. Between 1999 and like early 2000s, everybody was talented in the room, And just even now when we get together and have parties, it's like there's always a guitar that comes out, and you have Diva Mahal, daughter of Taj Mahal. She'll be sitting there playing guitar and hum a melody, and then someone starts over here and someone starts over there, and it becomes just a big old kumbaya love fest of jamming.
It's interesting, like New Orleans in the post-Katrina era. Now Brooklyn, a lot of it started to gentrify and become too expensive for the artists.
Very
who
much
live
so.
there.
Very much so. Thank God for rent-stabilized apartments.
And now, how did you get back into live performing in a band situation?
It was funny, man, because when I got to Brooklyn, the Whigs were just breaking up. I was just getting through being shot 6 times. Like, I wasn't looking to join a band. But I got to say, New York was very loving when I got there. Like, the story spread like wildfire. So I'd walk, say, down Avenue B, and someone would be like, Steve Meyers, glad you're alive, man, And I thought that was really cool. And then other New Orleans cats started moving to the neighborhood, and this cat named Jagan Aldridge was a saxophone player who actually studied at LSU as well. And he was like, man, we got to do something. And that's when the nucleus of Mighty Fine started, like roughly about late 2004.
Now, you described it, Mighty Fine, as a weekend warrior type project. Why is that?
It's because everyone in my band has really good daytime jobs. Like, my drummer is a scientist. Like, he can get you a monkey. Like, if you need a monkey, my drummer can get you a monkey.
That's awesome.
My bass player directs Nightline. Like, everybody has a really good day jobs.
Very good. So you started working on the album. Is called Get Up to Get Down.
Oh, yeah.
And how did you go about the writing and then the recording process for that?
Well, those were songs. Some of those songs were left over from our first recording, the Dirty Sessions. And then we were also just growing a lot, started traveling a lot, started coming down to New Orleans a lot to play shows, like down in Cafe Brazil and playing with Morning 40 on Mardi Gras Day at Checkpoint Charlie's. And so songs like Call Me Trouble, which is straight up a New Orleans song. Yeah. I mean, all came out of just coming back down south and playing rock shows, and then sucking it all up down here and bringing it back up north,
Well, that leads to my next question. Your sound is very, what I'm going to say, funk soul merged with garage rock.
Very much so.
How did you develop that sound?
I think it's just a love of all the things we like, But when we're starting the band, we're listening to the Dirt Bombs, Mick Collins, Gories, we're listening to Eagles of Death Metal, but we have a strong foundation in Parliament Funkadelic and the Meters, a lot of Meters, stuff like that. So you basically have 5 music nerds that got together and was like, what would be cool? To sound like this. You know?
Yeah, but it's a fascinating sound. 'Cause you've got that funk soul bass drum vibe,
Hmm.
but you've got big reverberant guitars,
Hmm.
a big snare with a big ring in it. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. Our first guitar player, Mitro, was really into um, what's Tina Turner's husband? Ike Turner.
Ike.
Thank you. I've only had 3 hours of sleep. Really into Ike Turner's sound and Ike Turner's arrangement, and so take that, but mix it with some like Motown,
Hmm.
uh, very Temptations type of thing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So Bo Diddley, all that stuff, you know. So again, it's just really the love of music and the history of music that I think help mold us to what it is, the sound of what it is.
Sure. What's
Yeah.
your songwriting process?
A lot of times now, these days, since I don't write any, I mean, I don't play a musical
Right.
instrument. So I'll come in with, say, a verse and a melody. I don't try to write a whole song by myself, but I'm good enough. My band's good enough where I can come in and say, you know what? It kind of has like a Sam and Dave thing with maybe a little bit of 10th Avenue Freeze Out with a little bit of Hold On, I'm Coming, you know? And everybody's like this? It's like, exactly. And that's kind of what it is. And then I just come in with basically a skeleton and let my band put on the layers, you know?
The lyrically and tone wise, there's quite a bit of darkness on the record. Does that come out of personal experience, observation, things?
Yes and yes.
Both, all the above.
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
Everything I write about, I probably have done.
Because you've got stuff on there that's like almost social satire, like
Mhm.
Socialite and fake plastic party.
Hmm. Fake Plastic Party comes out of my days of, um, I was an event producer for Maxim Magazine for like 5, 6 years,
My.
man. And I've seen everything you can possibly see, you know.
Oh, so
I
you've
could
been
not,
to the fake plastic
oh, I,
parties.
I have produced the fake plastic parties. So I knew that stuff hands down. So it was just me basically getting that life out of my system.
The horn section is very well done. And these are guys that are friends of yours.
Friends of ours, just
Yeah.
again, that's Brooklyn, man. Everyone in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, I mean, it's the Slackers. I don't know if you ever heard of the Slackers.
No.
World famous ska
Right.
band. Look them
Okay.
up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If
Okay.
you've never heard of them,
Yep.
that's who's playing horns on the record
Wow.
all
That's great.
throughout. They'll probably play horns on the new record that we're working on right now. We're working on a new record with Night Bob, who produced a lot of stuff for the New York Dolls.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we got like a 3-song EP coming out in the next few months.
Oh sweet.
Yeah.
Where do you record at?
Well, we used to record in our original guitar player's basement. He
Mhm.
had the perfect setup of a practice room, full studio. But
man.
these days, we go to Jersey and hash it out like a lot of punk bands do.
Yeah.
You know, sweat it out.
Hey, there are worse places than Jersey. I lived there for a while.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, there is. But, you know, this cat named Jesse Cannon has a great studio out there.
Yeah. I love the use of the falsetto
Hmm.
on things like "Worst in Me."
Oh, great.
Yeah, that. But again, that's a classic technique. That falsetto doubling and the other doubling of vocals. These are all classic techniques from the '60s,
Yeah, man.
right? You know,
We try to do our history.
and the Mr. Drive-By, autobiographical or
Yes. That's basically about me getting shot.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, there's some darkness. On
It
the
was a
record.
dark and stormy night. And you know what? It really was a dark and stormy night that night. You know?
It became one, and of course the song that you did the video on, that was Black Train.
Right.
Black Train. That's a good tune.
Thanks, man. That was one of those ones where, like, people really were trying to grasp our sound and trying to tell us what to sound like. And I was like, you know what? For me, writing it without the band at first, I was like, I'm going to do a paint by numbers, what people think Mighty Fine should sound like. And then I brought it into the room, and my band turned it into a beast. The boys just turned it into a beast. And it was just featured in a short film that won a diversity award at Cannes called Ladylike.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so we're really proud of that.
Well, you know, it's a catchy tune and it rocks. So
Thank you.
know, the whole record rocks. I advise anyone watching this video to check out Mighty Fine. Now you got to answer me this: how annoying is it to have another band out there called the Mighty Fine, the Mighty Fine, and they're like power pop punk or something like that?
Oh, the Mighty Fine.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. We started Mighty Fine in 2004. They started the Mighty Fine in 2008. And I was like, didn't you guys Google at all? Like, did you just use, like, just because you put a the in the front of doesn't mean you can just do that, you know? And I've talked to them several times about it, and they're kids. And I was like, you know what? Why don't you just change your name to the Mighty? Mighty Fine doesn't even fit your band. Call yourself the Mighty. That sounds cool, you know? And he said their whole philosophy was, well, you guys are East Coast and we're West Coast and we'll never.
Oh.
And it was like, that's just lazy, man.
Yeah.
That's straight up lazy. So I wish them well. I've seen lately on YouTube, they've been saying Mighty Fine CA for California.
Okay.
And it's like, all right, whatever. You know, I've been just waiting for them to die off. Go get a job, boys.
So you're back in Louisiana, the home of the blues. Your music is somewhat blues influenced. How do you see yourself on that continuum?
It's funny. I think the older we get as a band and as people, you just go back to your roots. Like my dad grew up on the Delta. My dad played B.B. King and Muddy Water records and went to school with B.B. King and all that stuff, man. So he had the 8 tracks all in the back seat of the Impala, you know. So that's just roots and home. You know, half my family is from Busher Creek, Mississippi. You don't even know what that is.
Nope.
Neither do I. Neither do I. But yeah, it's so. I think the older we get as a band and as people, we sit in a room and the songs get bluesier and more down home. We put out a song last year just to test the waters with our new keyboard player, and the song's called "Keep It Coming." I don't know if you had a chance to hear that, but it's going in that vein of like blues, more blues rock, you know, more. To me, it sounds more like Baton Rouge.
Yeah. And with the new keyboard player, he's doing a lot of the sort of Hammond organ stuff.
Yeah, man. He's Mickey Finn from, he's in the band Boss Hogg.
Okay.
He played with a lot of Motown bands and like the Spinners and the Manhattans, and he's a road dog, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done as much as we can in New York. People come out, they have a good time. We do, so it's time to do more branching out. And we come down here every few years. But it's just time to do more of that stuff, you know, be more of a well-rounded machine.
Yeah. Well, I want to wish you have the greatest set. You're going to be rocking this stage at 1:30.
1:30.
Down at the Foundation stage, which is our largest stage down the hill there, near on the River Center property there.
Right on.
And I want to just give you a big thanks for doing the interview with me and for coming to the Baton Rouge Blues Fest.
Hey, man, 3 hours of sleep, driving from New Orleans. I am here.
How was the Saturn last night?
The Saturn was, let me tell you.
New Orleans.
Let me tell you. God bless the Morning 40 Federation. Because playing with those guys, they always raise the bar. They get people ready. You know, everybody's sweating and dancing. So by the time you come on, it's easy. It's just easy. It was a very righteous kind of a night, you know.
Excellent.
People hanging from the rafters, dancing, sweating, just having a good time.
Well, Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to Mighty Fine and all your future endeavors, and you go rock the stage today.
Thank you. We're really happy to be here, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
You.
Y'all have a good night.